Yesterday, Wisconsin wins their record ninth as they beat Ohio State in a thriller. It was great to call that. And now we're here on Frankly Hockey. Then we'll head back to ESPN after the show for some studio stuff tomorrow night. So hello on Victory Plus, X and YouTube. Like, subscribe, hug, stick, tap, chat, do it all. And ask some questions as well. Frank will get later to and ask the insider. Only one game tonight, Frank. Senators at Rangers. 13 games left for Ottawa. 4 points out of the wild card. They're 7-2-1 in March. If they can go 7-2-1 again in this next stretch of 10 with 3 games to go, they got a chance to hit 100 and maybe make the playoffs. But again, they'll have to stay really hot like that. And most of these teams around the bubble have proven to be kind of average, and they can't continue to sustain that. Maybe Columbus will continue on, and if they do, they'll make the playoffs. Rangers tied for third from the bottom. They're kind of in a group here. It could be 3, it could be 7. It could be a big, Calgary got hot. They're kind of in that group. So there's a big difference between picking 2 and 3 and 7.
Mm-hmm. Mika Zibanejad playing game number 1,000 as well.
That's right. We were going to mention that in Franks and Beans, but Frank breaks the news as he normally does before we even get to Franks and Beans. That's all right. That's your job. You're an insider. All right, here we go. Before we get to the rundown, Alex Ovechkin scored a game-time goal in the third, 1,000th career goal. Frank, he makes it. Gretzky had 1,016, the only other. That's regular season and playoff combined. So Alex gets to 1,000. And again, the whispers seem to be growing that this might be it for Alex Ovechkin, going out kind of quietly in his career. Doesn't want to send off, doesn't want a rocking chair ceremonial thing, just kind of maybe say goodbye.
I just think that's the way to do it. He had that around the league fading and celebration all of last year. So he's gotten the accolades, the adulation once. I don't know. Do you need it again?
Anton Frondell, number 3 pick in the draft last summer after Schaefer and Misa, expected to make his debut with the Blackhawks this week, Frank.
Yeah, he's either flying over today or tomorrow. Obviously, that depends when he's going to make his debut, but it's either Tuesday on Long Island or Thursday in Philadelphia. The Hawks are throwing him right into the deep end of the pool. I'd expect him to start on the wing on Connor Bedard's line.
Boom. NHLPA announced the Global Series in Finland. A couple of regular season games between the Canes and Kraken in Helsinki next November 12 and 14. So if that's one of your favorite teams, you've never been to Finland, maybe start making your plans now.
I saw such a great tweet from the one and only Mike Sundheim, Carolina Hurricanes PR. He said the last time the Hurricanes played in Finland, Sebastian Aho was in the stands watching, and today he's on the poster. Pretty awesome.
Cool stuff. Stars, the second team to clinch a playoff berth. The Avs were the first. The Mammoth needed to defeat the Kings in any fashion, and they did in overtime. 70 games, the Stars clinched the playoffs. That's the fewest needed since they did it in 63 during their cup-winning season, 98-99. Other playoff race updates for those had a busy weekend. The Isles leapfrogged the Red Wings, who didn't play on Sunday, for the final wild card spot. Similar story out west, Frank, where the Golden Knights slid past the Oilers, who didn't play Sunday, for second in the Pacific.
Man, it's going to be a very long summer in Detroit if the Red Wings do not make the playoffs.
Ducks Sabres, you talk about a couple river hockey teams. That's fun to watch. 11 goals in all in overtime. 23rd come from behind win for the Ducks this season. Obviously, teams that can score can come from behind. That's tied for the most with the Canadians. Beckett Seneca, his 21st goal. That's one behind Schaefer's 22. Just a second loss for the Sabres since the Olympic break of any kind, 12-1-1. Darren Radish, 19th goal. Second most in a franchise history by a defenseman in Tampa. Boyle and Hedman tied for the record with 20. So it's a good chance Darren Radish is going to break the record for most goals by a Tampa Bay defenseman. And Kucherov, an assist. He leads the league in points. We'll talk about Kuch more later. 119 points. His streak of 3+ points on the road ends at 5. So he had 5 straight road games of 3 or more. The record is Mario at 6. Wyatt Johnston, 23rd power play goal. He does it. He passes Dino Ciccarelli. We've been on this all year long for our Victory Plus subscribers. That's the most in a single season Stars and North Star history. He's having one of those. Again, everyone can't get the same amount of noise for whatever reason, but he's definitely one of those guys who's been under the noise meter.
He really could have been on Team Canada, and clutch player at that. So looking forward to a big playoff for Wyatt Johnston. But 23 power play goals. It's amazing that Leon Draisaitl is the only player this century that has more than that. And it's crazy to think that in a single season, by the way, and it's crazy to think still how far away Wyatt Johnston is from Tim Kerr's record. He still has 12 to go to pass it. Obviously not going to happen, but crazy to think about.
Back to the Hurricanes, 19th game scoring at least 5 goals this year. That's tied for third, Buffalo and Tampa. So don't forget, Carolina is a team this year that can score goals. And maybe that's the way they solve their playoff goaltending issues. Just score a whole bunch, outscore their problems. And they got a pretty deep team. They can roll them, and they get good defense as well to activate. And so, again, Carolina been under the weeds. Could they be a team that wins the East and gets to the Stanley Cup final at long last after knocking at the door with Rod Brind'Amour as head coach? Brock Nelson, 9th game-winning goal this season, ties Cole Caulfield for second most. Stamkos has the most with 10. We'll get to Nashville in a second. And once again, Mika Zibanejad, 280th goal as a member of the Rangers. That's 4th most in Ranger history. Rod Gilbert, number 1. There's your wiener. 326. And then Mika, 4th most. And as Frank first reported, he plays his 1,000th game tonight for the Rangers, the only game in the league against Ottawa. And finally, the last Frank and the last being college hockey. Released the field of 16 yesterday. Frank, of course, it's computer-driven. It's determined beforehand, 1 through 16. But the committee can play with things. They can play with matchups. They can try to get some attendance in some places, keep teams close so people can drive. But once again, they infuriated much of the college hockey world by, sending Quinnipiac and Providence to South Dakota and doing other things. They just don't seem to care about attendance and things like that. There's a clamoring. David Carl is leading the charge to get these things for, have the number 1 seeds host the regionals to get big attendance and big numbers, get atmosphere, good for TV, good for revenue, good for students. But for now, it's not happening. But that is your bracket, Frank.
I mean, could you imagine if so look at these seeds that are the number 1 seeds. So you'd have Yost, Munn, the Ralph, and then the last one would be in Western Michigan, who's building an absolute palace. Could you imagine if those are the 4 places hosting the first weekend of the college hockey playoffs? Like, it'd be electric. I mean,
it would.
Look, I went to the regionals last year. They were in Allentown, the one close to me, and I was like, it's nice. Building's nice. Teams like it. It's a good setup, but it's still half full because not everyone's making the trek there. So I just think maybe it would add some flavor to everything that's been talked about, not to mention cutting down on some travel.
I had not actually. That's a great point by you. That these 4 number 1s this year all would have been really cool places. Lawson's kind of old school. You could tell the story of the Lawson Lunatics in Western Michigan. You'd still fill the place up, probably as much as you would a 10,000 seat arena somewhere else. And so you're right that this year's field really would have been so cool to be at Yost, to be, like you said, at the Ralph in North Dakota as well. So, but that is the field. Can't wait to start. I'm going to Loveland, Colorado for my regional there with Western Michigan, Minnesota, Minnesota State, Denver, and Cornell. So looking forward to going out there with Colby Cohen. And then we'll head to the Frozen Four in Las Vegas to declare the national championship on the ice this year on ESPN2 semifinals and on ESPN, the big network, 5:00 Eastern. Pretty cool time. I kind of like that. So hopefully for a nice big crowd and a big audience at home. All right, to the rundown and the Pacific pillow fight. Boy, Connor McDavid throws a log on the fire in oil country, Frank. He speaks softly, but he certainly carries a big stick. And he's obviously perturbed by the whole thing. His 20s are almost gone. This spring will be his last playoffs in his 20. Kind of line of demarcation for a lot of young athletes or even young people. When they hit 30, they kind of take inventory of their lives. Where am I? Do I need to make a decision here? Do I need to pivot? Do I want to start a family? Or in McDavid's world, I got to get that cup as my 30s are now here. Very interesting that he would use, and it's a couple sound bites from him, Frank. Even the coaching, John Cooper, Shine, that was a blast, like a nuclear furnace. A lot going on there.
Yeah, so this clip here about the Pacific Division being a pillow fight, this was like the most benign thing that he said. Here you go.
Obviously, we're fortunate to play in this division. A lot of teams are fortunate to play in this division. It's a bit of a pillow fight right now.
I mean, so then after this, he puts his coach on blast and indirectly in a sort of very passive aggressive way by basically gushing about John Cooper. And when you read the quote, it really stands out. They've got a great system. They're perfectly coached. They all know what they're doing all over the ice. It's impressive. They are a great team. They're extremely well coached. They're extremely well organized. They're very, very rehearsed in everything that they do. It's very impressive. And when you do break them down, they got a heck of a goalie to backstop them. So that was when he was asked about the Tampa Bay Lightning. And look, this is now the second time when he was asked, by the way, I should follow that up and just say when he was then asked about what the Edmonton Oilers can do better from a coaching perspective or whatever, he said, you can ask Chris Knobloch. Essentially, he left it right at the feet of his coach. So now that's McDavid. And this is coming after a few weeks after playing under John Cooper at the Olympics, of course, in Milan. And then a few weeks before that, Leon Draisaitl, he, before the Olympic break, put Chris Knobloch, sort of squarely at the front of it all and said, our coaching needs to be better. Now, he then sort of couched it a little bit, but this is a way more direct shot across the bow where the two of the top players on planet Earth have now torched their head coach. And man, it feels like we've reached the point in our season now with Edmonton where like our pets' heads are falling off. Draisaitl's over in Munich getting treatment for an injury that's keeping him out for the regular season. Tristan Jarry's scuffling in net. The Oilers are on track for their fewest points that they've ever had in a playoff year in the McDavid era. And now you've got clearly some dissatisfaction. And it feels like McDavid is experiencing in real time in front of us, Butchie, some grass is greener syndrome, where if it's not the coach, it might be the team, it might be the decision makers. It doesn't look good.
It doesn't. Right now, Edmonton, 77 points with only 11 games to go. They're actually only have a 4-point playoff cushion. Again, we think it'll be fine, but they're on pace for 89 points. So I guess that asks the question, does McDavid deserve a share of criticism? I would probably say no from this stand. First of all, he's at 399 career goals and 799 career assists. Kind of interesting. You could get them both in the same game. Could have a couple of puck-grabbing milestones in the same game. He's playing the most he's ever played this year, Frank, 2304. He's played every game. He's going to score 40+. He'll probably get to 130 points for just the third time in his career. And when he reaches 1,200 points as well, which he's going to do, he'll become the third fastest to do it after Mario and Wayne. I don't know if he deserves really a share of criticism at this point. He's showing up, he's producing, he's scoring goals, which was a mini criticism of me that he needs to score goals for this team, especially in the postseason. Just like Kucherov needs to score goals in the postseason, which he hasn't done the last 3 years. We'll get to Kuch in a second, but I don't. Do you?
I do. And I think in the interest of fair and balance, it's the easy way out to say that because Connor McDavid is among the league leaders in scoring and because he's producing the way that he always has, that he can get off scot-free. First off, and the first thought that I have is that's not what I want to hear coming out of my leader's mouth after a game. I don't want to hear him pouring some gasoline on this fire of this season where we've really struggled. I don't want to hear him gushing about another team's coach. And if we're all being like having a truly honest intellectual conversation, the truth is under John Cooper, Connor McDavid fell short with Team Canada just a few weeks ago in Milan, and how great that experience was. You still lost. And if we really want to talk about McDavid and some potential criticism here, it should be stated, I think, that part of the reason Canada lost was his choice selection and his interest in trying to win 3-on-3 on his own in that gold medal game, which we saw shades of in this game against the Tampa Bay Lightning the other night. Trying to do too much himself. And part of that trickles through the rest of the Edmonton Oilers ecosystem. I'm not saying it's not an admirable trait. I'm just saying you also have to rely on your teammates because let's face it, what did you say McDavid's ice time is so far this season?
2304, most in his career, highest of his career.
So that's 36 minutes a night that he's not on the ice. You have to trust and rely on your teammates. And that part clearly hasn't come through. Either that or this Oiler team is just bereft of skill in a way that they haven't been in a while, which is entirely possible. But my point is, watch the 5-on-3 the other night. Watch McDavid try and go through everyone. It's just a bunch of things that are lining up for me at once. The gold medal game at the Olympics and that 3-on-3, these comments, and now this. I'm not saying that Connor McDavid isn't the best player in the world, because I believe that he is. And I'm also not saying that Connor McDavid isn't a good captain, because I believe he is. But I'm saying that if you're going to pack all this up and you're going to truly evaluate this from top to bottom, that I don't think you can just say, oh, because he's the best player in the world, that none of this falls on him. I think to have a truly balanced and fair conversation, part of it is that he hasn't been perfect in that regard for a lot of the reasons that I pointed out. And if you really want to have it, then let's have it.
I think part of it too is, even the organization above him as well. Some of the things that have gone on, the ownership can be a lot. Losing Broberg and Holloway, I think it was kind of embarrassing to him. That was kind of an embarrassing moment, I think, to lose young prospects like that. A couple of things, a couple of guys who they kind of really needed, especially at this point, would be blossoming further. So yeah, I just think there's a lot there. And for him to say that, you're right, it's not the ideal thing to say right now, but he must look around and know that this team ain't winning the cup. Like, this isn't the last 2 years. And obviously Draisaitl's not there. He's in Germany trying to get some treatment to speed this thing up and maybe show up in the first round of the playoffs and be a factor. But I just wonder if Connor just is looking around, is just venting at this point. I'm surprised he's doing it.
Time then. That's now's not the time. Do that in late April if the Oilers lose in round 1. Then you can have the conversation publicly, and then you can also at the same time ask out. And maybe this is all shaping up to be one of the most interesting off seasons with a worst free agent class we've ever seen, with the questions surrounding Austin Matthews and clearly McDavid experiencing some grass is greener syndrome, that maybe if they somehow fail to make the playoffs or flame out in round 1, that this is a conversation that's had publicly, because it certainly, like, there's crumbs here that would seem to suggest that that's part of what he's feeling. But man, if I'm running the Edmonton Oilers, this is the last thing I want to hear my captain do after a loss. I'm sorry. It is.
You're right. It could be a fascinating summer, because certainly with those two fellas and the time left on their deal, it would be an absolute haul. It could be a transformative deal. And that's why teams need to be ready when these opportunities are available, with prospects and cap room and all that. Most teams have cap room with what the cap is doing, but to have that type of package. But from Connor McDavid and that Debbie Downer situation to Nikita Kucherov and the Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe they're kind of finding their game after a big pothole. And meanwhile, Kuch is just an absolute menace. He's on a Wayne Gretzky type of run right now, 99 points in 46 games, 3-point lead on McDavid for the Art Ross, 5 on McKinnon. He's got 32 even strength goals this year, Frank. I did a deep dive in his stats. That's a career high. So he's not real power play dependent getting these big numbers this year. And again, that could prove, like I mentioned, he's been a bad playoff goal scorer the last 3 years. They need him to score goals in the postseason. So now you got 32 even strength goals, career high, plus 45. That's a career high you see right there on our graphic. That's second to McKinnon at 57. Won the Hart 6 years ago. That'd be a pretty big gap between Hart trophies. He came second 2 years ago, third last year. Turns 33 in June, and this is quite the run, as we see right here, the Art Ross race.
Yeah, I mean, it's a special race, and what Kucherov is doing is otherworldly. I mean, here's the thing. I think Nikita Kucherov has the Hart Trophy locked up with one exception, and that's if the San Jose Sharks make the playoffs and Macklin Celebrini guides them there. That's it. Short of that, with Celebrini knocking on the door of 100 points, doing it by himself, the gap that Kucherov has created between himself and his teammates, and this run, 100 points in 47 games played. I mean, so these are the numbers since November 22nd. I mean, it's crazy to think what he's accomplished just since November 22nd. This is a great season for some people. You're deleting the first 6 weeks of it, and this is still what he's putting up. 100 points on the dot in 47 games since November 22nd.
Yeah, and San Jose is really fading now. They're 5 points out. I think they're running out of gas. I think celebrating might come up a bit short. Be curious to see if he finishes in the top three with McKinnon, McDavid, and Kucherov all having really productive years. But San Jose looks like they're fading. Draisaitl's obviously out now. He won't play again in the regular season. And now Tampa Bay suddenly, they're kind of going, they've kind of righted the ship a little bit, 5-4-1 in their last 10. And Frank, I'm just looking at the Eastern Conference. And it reminds me of the teams in the Pacific Division over on the other side. Like, this might really break for them to get back to the finals. I don't know. Even if they don't catch Buffalo, their first round matchup's going to be against a young, kind of average team, whether it's Montreal. That would be, I think, a good matchup for Tampa, Boston, Detroit. And then what if Buffalo gets knocked off by a Columbus or Pittsburgh? Tampa, this could be a nice little thing to get some playoff mojo, which they haven't had since they got to the Cup Finals and lost to Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, the Florida Panthers have been standing in their way more often than not.
Right. 2 years in a row.
Yeah, for whatever reason, and someone reminded me over the weekend, the Panthers or the Lightning have really struggled against Sergei Bobrovsky, even going back to his days in Columbus. I mean, it's been a challenge for them. Now that that's not in the way, I mean, it does kind of feel like the door is open and the path is there for them to go on a deep run, at least to the very least, to the Eastern Conference Final. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
All right, back to the Pacific pillow fight. Here come the Predators. 4 wins in a row, longest win streak of the season. 2 points ahead of the Kings for the second wild card spot in the Western Conference. Philip Forsberg had a couple of goals in their fourth straight win. He's up to .350 in his career, the sixth Swedish player to reach .350. And I'll tell you, this is a shocker, Frank, that if somehow Nashville wins a wild card and opens up against Colorado in the first round.
Yeah, to quote your friend Stuart Scott, they've been cooler than the other side of the pillow, I guess is the way to say it, on this pillow fight. Because while these teams in the Pacific have been mashing each other with memory foam, I mean, Nashville has just used this opportunity to waltz right in and say, oh, hey, LA, you don't want to be in the playoffs? Great. Same thing with San Jose and Seattle going on these skids. Okay. Yeah, we'll take that playoff spot that no one else seems to want, which may in the end be a waste of 8 days going up against the Colorado Avalanche, which is where they'd be slotted right now for the second wild card. Does it make this season feel like more of a win for the Preds? Like, I feel like they're more lost than anyone out there. Like, at least LA's got a pile of injuries. The Sharks are up and coming. I don't know what to feel about the Preds, who just kind of have this group that's like, hey, we're going to box out the noise and everything else that's surrounding us, and we're just going to go play, and we're going to play well. I don't know what else to chalk up this Nashville Predators run to.
Home Sharks tomorrow, home Devils Thursday, home Canadiens, a team that, young, but they can that's a nice week where they can really start to pile some points up and secure that spot. And, even in April,
who else is going to take it from them?
They still have to go west.
Honestly, who else is going to take it from them?
Kings and Sharks and Ducks and Utah, the Western trips. That could decide it for them.
Kings, Sharks, they might be able to TKO the Kings and Sharks on that trip. Like, it might be over.
Right. I think it reflects well on Steven Stamkos. It really does. I think he took this at a source of pride. He took a lot of pounding last year. I think it was embarrassing to him. I think he stepped up. And I think even Ryan O'Reilly, these are pros. These are Stanley Cup champions. I just think they just want to tell the rest of the league that we're not a pansy team in this league. Like, we're not a pushover. We're going to show. And I think that really speaks well to some of these. Roman Yossi's a dude. Like, these are professional hockey players. Forsberg too. These are like serious men, serious athletes. So I kind of like that. I gotta give them some stick taps.
Well, I think the other thing is that it speaks really highly of the fact that they want to be there. Like, Steven Stamkos did not want to get traded. Ryan O'Reilly did not want to get traded. They really like the setup and situation there. They wish they were surrounded with a better group, but they've held up their end of the bargain and have played really well. The trouble is they kind of have to do it on their own because the bottom six of their team was more or less decimated at the trade deadline with the guys that they shipped out and then kind of inexcusably hanging on to Eric Halla. It was just an very odd season, but those guys at the top of the pay table, they deserve full marks for the way that they've played, no doubt.
Absolutely. You're giving someone like Matthew Wood, they're giving him some playing time now. And he's up 15 goals in 59 games. He might be a kind of guy that gets a 25 to 30 and maybe a 70-point guy. So, suddenly not too terrible. Might get the owners a couple of playoff gates. That's a nice little thing you can do for the owners. Get a couple sold out rinks and playoff games against Colorado. So, yeah, overall, I kind of like what's going on in Nashville. And finally, before we get to and maybe include in Craig Button as our guest, AJ Greer gets 3 games, Frank, for his, call it boarding. It's a lot going on here. It's interference, it's boarding, it's unsportsmanlike, it's roughing. I don't know. You can call a bunch of them, but he gets 3.
It's careless, reckless, gross, potentially paralytic. I mean, I could come up with a million phrases. All I can tell you is that there is 0.0 place in the game for a hit like this from AJ Greer. And if you've listened to this show over the last few weeks, you will probably not have seen a bigger defender of the Department of Player Safety and their process and how they go through it. And I get that in this situation, you can only, you can charge what you want, but it's only what you can defend in terms of backing it up through a process. I think this is gross. This is not a hockey play. There's nothing to this that suggests that it's even close to a hockey play. It's dirty and dangerous. And this should have been a double-digit suspension in my view. The fact that it only ends up being 3 games is the first time all season long, first time in the last few years that the Department of Player Safety has lost me, and I don't get it whatsoever.
Yeah, it just seems like sometimes the NHL, the more criticism they get towards a topic, the more they double down, and I don't think they would operate that way with that kind of emotion and even paying attention that much to it because, they speak and work really for the players and the league and Gary Bettman. It's all in unison. So you would hope they would just dispassionately, look at this, each thing and say, what if I was the coach of the Flames? What if I was a teammate? What if I was Zary? What is right? So let's bring in Craig Button here and our weekly guest here on Frankly Hockey, TSN analyst, director of scouting. And, sometimes it can get kind of loathsome commenting on every suspension. Craig, I know it can be a lot, but do you have anything to say after the latest?
Hey, listen, again, Frank talks about understanding the process. I'm a huge defender of the Department of Player Safety too. Does that mean that I agree with everything they mete out in terms of punishment? No, because as Colin Campbell said at the managers' meetings, he said it's like a snowflake. We know it's a snowflake, but not every snowflake is the same. So I do. I think they do a marvelous job. And what ends up happening is we get these incidents, and then we get the public outcry. Now, one of the biggest challenges that the Department of Player Safety has is the NHLPA. The NHLPA and the NHL are collectively bargained the discipline. So let's just go back to Radko Gudas. They're going into a hearing and they're arguing for less games for that play on Austin Matthews. So until, to your point, Frank and John, until the time comes where all the managers go, sorry, that play deserves 6 games. And when other players go, that play deserves 6 games. That's when we've made progress. But there's some restraints on the Department of Player Safety, because what you don't want to have, and Gary Bettman doesn't want this, is have to be appealing all the time. 2 years ago, there were 6 appeals on suspensions. None of them were overturned. You don't want to be spending time in appeals, and so there are parameters that you have to work through, and I think the Department of Player Safety has steadily raised that bar so that they can start to establish a minimum. But I think we can go further, and it's not up to the Department of Player Safety to say, okay, it's this amount of gains. It's about the NHL and the NHLPA saying we want to make sure that we have a greater deterrent.
We could probably do a whole hour show on that. We got to move on. Between that and the goalie interference again over this weekend, it's like both these things back to back. We could go around and around in a circle. But Craig, I got to ask you about Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. We had an interesting conversation a bit ago before you joined. And I said, you know, McDavid is obviously the best player in the world, and he's put up and produced the way that anyone, you know, you couldn't knock anything that he's done from a production standpoint. But I got to say that from a leadership perspective, I was really thrown off by his comments over the weekend, because if I'm running the Edmonton Oilers, it's like the last thing I want to hear is my captain throwing a log on the fire, being the second guy to really kind of torch Chris Knoblauch this season. What do you make of his comments, and how do you feel about just in general about where McDavid is as he's using his voice a little bit more?
Well, I mean, I have no problem with people having a voice. And, you know, we heard him speak out and express his views on player safety and the process that the Department of Player Safety uses, which is good. Let's have the discussion. Let's have your voice. But when you have a voice, you're also going to have to use it in a way that I think is responsible. And when it isn't, I hope he's ready for the criticism. Connor McDavid signed a 2-year contract extension. If he doesn't think that it was a good spot for him in Edmonton, it's on you. Why did you sign a 2-year contract extension? You could have left this summer. You could have evaluated. It's amazing. I'd hate to hear what he has to say about a coach that only got him to the second round of the playoffs or to the third round of the playoffs. A coach that got him to the Stanley Cup final on back-to-back years. And to me, we know that it's not 100% here or 100% there. This team in 2026 is not better than the team in 2024. That's on management. When you lose Broberg and Holloway and McLeod and Fogle and Ceci and Corey Perry, that's on management. That's not on the coach. And this team isn't good enough. It's not strong enough. It's not deep enough. And the problems they have are a direct result of decisions they made over the last 2 summers. So you want to blame the coach, you can say, okay, listen, we could be a little bit better here. We could do a little bit more. You know, at the end of the day, Connor McDavid, you have choices. You signed a 2-year contract extension. Oh, boy, now you don't like it? Sorry, you're not getting any forgiveness from me for your comments. Talk about,
okay.
He didn't just take the bus and run over the coach. He ran him over, backed it up, and said, wait a sec, did I really get him?
So this goes hand in hand with what you just said about the team not being as strong as it was a couple years ago. Is he also trying to do too much when you watch his game?
Well, why wouldn't you try to do too much? Like, he knows he doesn't have enough around him. And it's quite simple. Like, this team has been carried on the backs of 97 and 29, even when they were strong. I mean, last year, it was unbelievable what those 2 guys did. And again, like, you see them like end up in these spots where they run up against it. And then these guys pull them out, and they pull them out again. Well, I think this year for Connor McDavid, the frustration is mounted to a point where he knows they can't do enough. He knows that no matter what they do, as great as it is, it's not enough. So I have no problem with somebody trying to do too much. I mean, there's too many players in this league that don't do nearly enough. So, yeah, he does a little bit too much at times. And, yes, he's trying to force things at times. But that's the fire in him. That's the drive in him. And that's not on him. That I'm going right back to management. And they made some really, really poor decisions.
And like I said earlier, Craig, I think some of those decisions have really gutted him, almost embarrassed him on some of them.
I agree,
and I
John.
think that's part of him venting.
John, I think that's a great point. And, you know, you're watching around you and you're seeing players that you know, like are good players that can really help you. And now you see them disappear and they leave. And, you know, you're going to embrace the players that come in, but the players recognize really quick. They go, well, he's not as good as the guy we lost. Well, he's not as good as the guy we lost. Well, he's not as good. You're not fooling the players. The players know. And I believe that the mounting frustration is born out of a lot of different elements of their season, trying to do too much, to your point, Frank, and feeling that he's got to even do more. And maybe no matter what he does, it's not going to be enough. Losing players. Yeah, there was an eruption there of a lot of frustration.
I have one quick follow, Craig, too. I just want to give I love prospects. I love when guys come in the league. And Anton Frundell, I'm so excited to see him in a Chicago uniform, what he looks like in an NHL game, how he fits in. I think it's going to look good. But give the Chicago Blackhawk fans who are watching just kind of what they might expect from him and what you feel about this player and how he'll fit in to Connor Bedard. You know he's going to be on his line to start.
Sasha Barkov mold. That's what I see in Anton Frondel. That's what I've always seen. It's even you wear 16, just like Sasha Barkov does. Now, if he can come close to that level of play, you have a tremendous player. But from the first time I saw Anton play, and that was a few years ago, like it just struck me that this is how Sasha Barkov played. They're not going to be gaudy numbers. What it's going to be is his substance numbers. Plays that matter to help you win, players that help everybody else be better around him, plays that help a team win and be successful. That to me is Anton Frondel.
What is a realistic expectation for him? Like, what if you're, coaching the Chicago Blackhawks this year and you're getting him for the last few weeks of the season, aside from getting him adjusted, like what are you hoping for him to accomplish as he, then heads into a really important offseason?
I'm not looking for any numbers, Frank. I'm looking for straight, get a feel, understand what the league is all about, understand how fast it is, how strong the players are, and take those experiences, whatever they end up being. Maybe he comes in and gets 20 points. Maybe he gets 2. But the experiences he's going to gain are going to help him this summer, and are going to help him come back next year. Because it's next year that matters. It's not these games that matter. This is clearly just about getting your feet wet, getting a little bit of experience under your belt, and then taking those experiences. And I know Anton. Anton's going to take those experiences, and he's going to apply them hard. He's not somebody that's going, well, I'll come back. We'll see how it all works out. He will take this stretch here, and he will take it seriously. He'll play competitively, but he'll take all of those experiences away over the course of the summer. And I think it's next year that you watch a player come in and have a what I would call a 19-year-old rookie impact. And I think he can do that.
There's 3 months till the draft-ish, right around there, Craig. Is there anything that can change from this point? Like, I know you kind of look at your list and your guy, you see the group of players, and maybe it does depend on the ping pong balls. Sometimes players are so good young, and some of them can be so good young. It might depend on your need as an organization. Like, would Chicago draft another defenseman? And should they, if he's better than 5 of the ones they have now? Like, that's kind of an interesting concept to think about. But what can happen between now and late June in the draft and the order, in your mind, from what you've seen in the past?
Why don't we just talk about Chicago, John? Why don't we stay on Chicago? So you say, are they going to draft another defenseman? They have some outstanding players. They drafted Nathan Bain, who played in Kamloops this year in the second round. They drafted Merrick Van Acker, who in the first round. They drafted Jack Pridham. I mean, I'm just naming 3 guys. Sasha Bovair just turned pro. He was a first-round draft pick. Are they going to draft another forward? They are flush with all kinds of talent at all the different positions. and all these players are not going to play for the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the first thing. And for Kyle Davidson and the Chicago Blackhawks, you're sitting on what I would call a real wealth of talent. And other teams are going to be interested. Maybe they don't even use that pick. Maybe they use that pick to try to acquire a player. Maybe they try to use it to look at different areas of the roster where they can say, okay, we have an opportunity now to get this player. I'll go back in time, and it's a different little bit of time. But the Quebec Nordiques traded Dale Hunter for the 15th pick in the draft. It ended up being Joe Sakic. And for the Washington Capitals, that became a big deal because Dale Hunter was a real instrumental part of their team. And they'd had some success, but he became another big piece in that. So could you get that type of a deal where a team, now I know we're talking about a lot higher pick here, but to me, Chicago, because they have so many quality prospects, and I say that wealth of talent, I think that their options are not limited. And when you go into a draft, and now you can just listen. You can just listen, and you can, hey, that makes sense for us, or it doesn't. But I don't think that they have to be married to any type of player. I think in the top, for me right now, in the top part of the draft, and when I say the top part of the draft, call it 4, call it 5, whatever you want to say, I think there's difference makers there. So I think if they want to look for a difference maker, they can get one. And if they want to trade the pick, they can do it. But I think the opportunities that they have are going to be significant. And most teams, John and Frank, at this point in time, they've narrowed down. They know where they're picking in the range. They know who the players are watching now down the stretch, who they're evaluating. And the only thing that can change that now is what kind of offers are you looking at? Like, for an example, you look at it last year, 16 and 17. Montreal traded those picks for Noah Dobson. That, to me, is kind of the blueprint that Chicago might be looking at. And it might be looking at a much higher-end player.
Yeah, and just for the record, I do think Chicago is open to moving those picks. A, not before the lottery, and B, they have Florida's pick, which is top 10 protected, so keep that in mind that they have to see how that shapes out as well. I want to ask you about the Detroit Red Wings. Obviously, they've hit a run of injuries, missing key significant pieces as they're trying to end this playoff drought. I hate to ask the what-if question with 10 games left in the season, but what if the Detroit Red Wings, with 12 games left, what if they miss the playoffs this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you ask yourself this question. This is the way I would frame it in my answer, is what has this season shown you? Has it been a season of disappointment? Has it been a season of falling short? Did you achieve to the level you thought you could? And if you don't feel you've achieved to the level that you thought you could, and there's no real rationale. Now, I know injuries are always part of it. Then I think you got to look at making some significant moves. I'm not talking about the manager. I think the manager's done a good job in there, and I think that Todd McLellan's a good coach. I'm talking about moves with your players that say we're not going to be in this spot next year. I think they got some really good talent. I think they got some really good players. I think they've had a good season. And obviously missing the playoffs would be a big disappointment, but I'd look at something that would be significant in terms. Like, when I say significant, I'm talking like what the Minnesota Wild did in acquiring Quinn Hughes. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about fiddling with the dials, going and getting this guy or that guy. I'm talking about significant.
But okay, can I ask you one thing about what you said? Like, has Steve Yzerman done a good job? Like, this has been a pretty extended
Yes, Frank, I'm going to answer the question. Yes. Yes, he has. They had no prospects. They had no draft picks when he took over. So he's had to build. And if you think that that's a 3-year exercise, no way. Like, because you need all those players to be moving along at a certain time when they're able to produce. It's not at 18 or 19. It's at 22, 23, 24. I think Steve's done a really good job. And yes, the expectations in Detroit are high, but I think he's done a really good job. Because I evaluate how he went in there and what he had to work with when he went in there. That's where the Toronto Maple Leafs are headed. The Toronto Maple Leafs are headed to where the Detroit Red Wings were when Steve took over and when Brendan Shanahan took over in 2014, in my view. So I do think that Steve's done a good job. But I think now it's a situation where you gotta do something significant in the player personnel, like another difference maker. Like a difference maker, somebody that can impact the game in a significant way. And I think there's opportunity, especially when you have the prospects that they have.
Yeah, so I agree with the perspective in terms of where they're starting. I look at the Red Wings this year and I say, I think Todd McLellan squeezed every drop out of that group. I don't think there's anything left to wring out. And yet they may still fall short, and they're kind of stuck for the 3rd year in a row in the same exact spot. And the other 2 summers, he didn't really do anything to boost this group. So how do you get over the hump? And you say make a significant move and don't fiddle with the dials. But that, to me, is where Steve Yzerman has been lacking.
Well, he brought in John Gibson. That's not lacking. That was an area of weakness last year for him. He brought in John Gibson, right? But Simon Edvinsson and players like that are trying to grow. Like, we all want them to be somewhere yesterday. They don't get there yesterday. And I think that patience has to play out. And so when you talk about Todd McLellan squeezing everything out of it, for me, there's a big difference between squeezing something out of a lime that doesn't have very much juice in it and squeezing everything out of a lime that still has lots of juice in it. And those are the young players. And they have good young players that are going to come in. I mean, they drafted Carter Bear last year. I'm just using him as an example. He had the Achilles issue. He's been a phenomenal player in the Western Hockey League. Is he ready to come in? No, he isn't. but is he ready to maybe give them a little bit more scoring? And you start to look at, I mean, Mo Seider, like it's now that he's become a front line. Let's talk about top 10, top 15 defensemen in the league. It didn't this was the 6th overall pick. We know how great Lucas Raymond is, and Lucas Raymond is still young, right? So I don't think anybody's saying that, it's all roses in Detroit, but at the same time, I think that this team has potential, and I think that young players can take it there. And I think that, again, I think you got John Gibson last summer. You better do. I think they need more help, specifically on the blue line. Like, I think they really need help on the blue line. And if they can get another scoring forward, that would help too. So maybe in an ideal world, but I don't think you can go fiddle with the dials. I think you got to get after it. Like, let me just pose it right here. Let me pose it right here. Okay, and you guys have probably talked about it, thought about it, mentioned it, but there's talk now about Austin Matthews. If Austin Matthews becomes available, Steve Yzerman better be in.
Exactly. Like, will you be bullish? Will you be overly bullish? And like I said, I felt like some GMs, when this happens with Jack Eichel, that they just didn't go for the home run when a dude like this is available. You got to go for it, man. This is an Easter egg of gigantic proportions. It just doesn't come out of the tree. Go for it. All right, before we let you go, Craig.
I agree with that, John. Being bullish, being bold.
Being bullish, being bold. So before we let you go, I'm in Penn State. I'm driving back to ESPN after our streamcast here, and Frank mentioned a legendary ice cream place that I have to stop and get an ice cream cone. One scoop for the little ride home. I'm curious, what's your go-to flavor when Craig Button has to have an ice cream or goes into a classic ice cream spot, whether it's in New Orleans or Naples, Florida, or Penn State? What flavor does Craig Button get?
It's chocolate. It is chocolate. It's not Rocky Road. It's not chocolate. Yep. It's chocolate. It's
straight old school chocolate.
It is straight old school chocolate. And if they have, like, I will judge an ice cream place by their French vanilla. I'm not a big vanilla guy, but the French vanilla, there's an art to making good French vanilla ice cream. My mother showed me what the taste should be like. So, but I'm a chocolate guy. French vanilla, if not.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm French, vanilla, banana, strawberry. Those are kind of like my three that I kind of rotate with. I love chocolate, but I like that. That's a good old school answer.
What's Frank's?
Well, I sent him to Berkey Creamery on Penn State's campus, and the go-to for me is the Peachy Paterno. So, I'd have to. Wow. That would be my recommendation.
Is it peach?
It's 8.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's 0.8 of a mile from where I am right now. On a hot
summer day, a peach, one scoop of peach, like, it just hits the spot.
Yep, there you go. Well, when I'm in the area, I know what I'm going to be trying. Because I'm open to trying things. I am open to trying things and taking recommendations.
Open 7:30 a.m. to 9. That is a legendary Berkey Creamery for you. I'm going to head right there.
Yes, that is.
Another great segment. Another great segment, Craig. Thank you so much. Elite.
Wipe the corners of your mouth when you finish the ice cream.
Jeez.
I will.
Have a great day, you guys.
Peace.
See you, Craig.
Wow. Craig Button. Great hockey talk there. In depth, opinionated, strong, not beating around the bush. That's always a great segment here on Frankly Hockey. All right. Ask the Insider. Ask the YouTube chat. How's it going, Frank?
That is a good question. FF2X701 says, come on, chocolate is the best flavor. All right. SYNNYT, whatever that is, his username, his or her, says, how much does ownership influence hockey decisions compared to the GM and the front office? Well, it's a great question, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show about part of what Connor McDavid has been dealing with. Obviously, their owner there is involved at a different level than others are around the league. So the true answer is it varies franchise to franchise. Like in Tampa Bay, Jeff Vinik, before he sold his share of the team, he was sort of known around the league as the best hands-off owner, provided everything that they needed, arena upgrades, building around the facility, whatever it is that the Lightning were looking for. Jeff Vinik had it, but he never really entered the chat for hockey ops decisions or scouting players or monitoring transactions. That wasn't his thing. So that would be the one end of it, would be like the Vinik poll. And then at the other end, I'd say you have like Tom Dundon in Carolina, who's so involved in every aspect of evaluating every transaction, calling people around the league to find out more information, and being in touch with agents and whoever else that he needs to be in order to get the information he feels is required to get a deal done. So every team is kind of somewhere in between the two. And I find personally that the more the owner is involved, typically the more second guessing is involved. And that makes the job that much harder from a hockey talent evaluation standpoint. And I think there's pluses and minuses. I also think there's some owners that are so little involved that it becomes a bit of a soulless operation, that you need some kind of jam, but just enough to know that they're supported in everything that they do. That, I think, is where the line gets drawn.
Yeah, and certainly some, the LA Kings don't have a real meddling owner, but
Nope.
But if Artemi Panarin becomes available and him and his agent are asking for big years and big money, they're like, well, we got to check with the owner if we're going to give this guy this much. And sometimes, like, you know what, that's too rich. No, okay, I kind of agree with you, but we had to check because this is a great player, and I want you to make sure that this guy is available. And I'm with you.
Yep.
And then he circles back and he get him at a great price. Like, that can happen. But and like, the old Boston Bruins days, Harry Sinden had the keys. Jerry and Jacobs trusted Harry Sinden way back in the day. And I would think owners would be less meddling, but Dundon's obviously an absolute unicorn. That's like you said, he calls players and he talks to players and he likes all that stuff. But still to this day, you think, even these really, because I would think a lot of these guys don't know hockey, where other sports like baseball, football, they think they know because they grew up with it. So they wouldn't be as meddling in hockey as they would with them.
That's
sports.
The problem is some of these owners, and I won't name the team, but someone's in charge and doesn't know a lick about hockey, comes in admitting that they don't know a lick about hockey, and 2.5 years in, they're sitting on scouting meetings and they're giving their opinion like, you didn't even know the game before, and now all of a sudden you do. I don't know why hockey has this thing going for people that don't know a lot about it, that feel like they're ultra confident, and I see it at the rink every day. Parents who never skated, don't know anything about it, didn't watch it until their kid played. All of a sudden, they've got an opinion because they pay $3,000. It's the same at the ownership level. Because I paid a few $100 million or $1 billion, I've been successful in every single walk of life that I've ever been in. I'm going to come in and I'm going to learn hockey, and I'm going to do it better than you, hockey guy who's been in this job for 3 decades. And it's amazing how fast that changes from guys that were just sort of on the periphery to, I'm one of the world leaders in hockey. It happens very, very fast. And I don't know what it is about this sport that allows people to feel so confident.
#hockey. Morgan Geekie, dummies, a Bruins fan. Now, Morgan's not a big social media guy. He picks his spots. He's kind of a quiet guy. Had a cool feature on ESPN with his baseball love. And I think it was actually maybe Nesson went to a company, got a new bat made. And it was a good segment off the ice with Morgan Geekie. But once in a while, Frank, he will pop in on X in a big way.
And just absolutely hammer this guy. Poor Chris O'Connor didn't even see it coming, didn't tag him or anything. But yeah, love to see this. What else does your crystal ball say, Chris? So, sometimes with all the hate these guys get, it's okay to just, drop a little pixie dust out there and let them know you're seeing it.
And he swings from the heels, just like his one-timer. He doesn't. And I kind of picture, what does he do? Does he go home and just put his name in the search bar? Because I'm sure he's not following Chris Johnson.
Oh, guys
Chris
do
Johnson
that all
doesn't.
the time.
Yeah, he's not getting a lot of action out there on the X. So he's not going to be in his algorithm. He's not going to find him. So he just much search Morgan Geekie every now and then and see what the haters, because maybe it fuels him. Maybe like, yeah, I like that. I need that. I could pick my game up a little bit. I need some hate. Give it to me. So I just think I can see him type it in Morgan Geekie.
As someone frequently on the end of the hate, I could tell you, A, sometimes it finds you, and B, you may want to see it fuel you for a little bit, but at some point you'll just realize that it's an IV drip of toxicity.
Yeah, I'm not a name. I never search my name, and like it's obvious some people who do because they quote tweet and respond to it. Like you said, sometimes it'll get in your feed because they will tag you, and they
Yep.
want they probably want a reaction. So I tend not to do that when they tag me because they're looking for a reaction. But yeah, I don't search my name and look for stuff out there. Sometimes hate finds me on direct messages, and sometimes love finds me. It goes both ways. You got to speculate to accumulate. I'm curious, when I saw the 1-game schedule, is Frank going to go with a future here? Is he going to bet on a horse race? Is he going to bet on an ice cream flavor that I choose at Berkey Creamy? Like, what's he going to go? But you're going to go with the 1 game tonight.
No, I'm not. I'm going to go with a peek at the Stanley Cup odds. Sens at Rangers. I don't really like the spread. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to be wedged or forced into 1 game. And by the way, we did get a nice slump buster on Friday to get back in the win column to end last week. We're pushing 10 units, want to get back into the double digits. So not an official play tonight, but Butchie, when you look at the Stanley Cup odds, one of the big things that I struggle with is, yes, the Avs are the favorite. We get it. We know. But man, it's hard to find value elsewhere. Like plus 290, 2.9 to 1 doesn't really get anyone excited for the Colorado Avalanche, not when a lot of things could go wrong. So the team that I'm looking here is the Dallas Stars, 9 to 1. Should the Stars, essentially be a 6 to 1 underdog if they were to face the Avs in a second round series? Probably not. It's obviously going to be a lot closer than that. So I know that this isn't exactly how the math works, but this is how my brain works, thinking about, hey, the Stars have played unbelievable hockey the last few weeks and months. The Avs have had their moments where they've looked kind of relatively average and have shown some cracks. And I really have concerns about that Avs power play. I don't know if you can go through an entire postseason without that power play working as McKinnon and Natchez overhandle the puck. So I'm not saying they're ripe for an upset, but I'm saying I think the Stars and Avs are a lot closer. And clearly with the Stanley Cup winner odds, you got to have that team win in the second round and then come through in the last 2. I just think the Stars have some value here at 9 to 1. I think they've got some of the best value on the board.
Yeah, the most value right there that I see are the Stars and the Wild. And that's because they play each other. And that's why their odds are where they are, because obviously Vegas or whomever sets the odds are like, they have to beat that team, the Wild, and the Wild, the Stars, and then beat the Avalanche. We're betting on that. And that's a lot. Therefore, the odds are where they are. So, but you're right. In terms of value, those are my 2 picks.
Yeah, I think even the Wild have shown some cracks here of late, losing to a bunch of non-playoff teams. Quinn Hughes is trying to do a lot. Can their goaltending hold up? I just think Dallas hasn't had a lot of the same questions that the Avs and the Wild have had. And by the way, Jake Ottinger has played better of late, but hasn't that's the amazing part about the Stars season, is that for as well as Dallas's record is, and they clinched yesterday, by the way, officially, as you mentioned in Franks and Beans, Ottinger has just been kind of okay. So does he have another level to get to in the postseason?
All right, now to the last word, and this is just unimaginably sad and horrific. Jessi Pierce, just 37 years old, and her 3 children, Hudson, Caden, Avery, died in a house fire in White Bear Lake in Minnesota on Saturday. Fire crews responded at 5:30 a.m. after neighbors reported flames coming through the roof. They believe that they were inside. Responders encountered a fully involved structure. A deceased dog was also found at the scene. Her husband, Mike, was out of town on a business trip, apparently. But this is just awful, awful, beyond awful. It really shakes you at your core. It makes you question a lot of things about life. And, all of us in hockey have come across Jessi at one point in our life. I saw her at the Frozen Four in 2024, did podcasts with her, and just a light, and just obviously someone who was so grateful for her job in hockey. And Frank, I know you come across her as well.
Yeah, this one really, really hurts. And I feel for the Pierce family and her Minnesota Wild colleagues in that press box, and just what an empty hole that so many people have in their hearts today. And this is really part of what made Jessi so amazing and unique, is that as everyone's trying to make it, right? We're all trying to do everything at once, trying to be a mom, trying to be a hockey reporter. I mean, you see her, this is when she would bring her kids into the Wild dressing room, just trying to get through the day, and to see the relationship that she had with the team, with players, with everyone around that organization, and the care that they all had for her. I mean, you mentioned a light, and that's the first thing I thought of with Jessi upon hearing this news, is just her zest for life. She just seems so excited about everything. And I saw a tweet, and I wish I bookmarked it to remember who posted it, as I read all these different tributes yesterday. And they said, as I thought of all the different memories about Jessi, I couldn't think of one that was negative. And that's an amazing trait to have, and what a legacy to have. Gone at 37 and alongside her 3 kids. Like, I cannot even begin to process it. It does not make sense, does not feel real. And I know that that's exactly what everyone in Minnesota is feeling today. And I think, look, we're not going to stop talking about Jessi and the light and the zest for life that she had. I can't come to grips with all of it. I really can't.
And it's just, it's kind of eerie sometimes how life works. I went on her X page just to look at some tweets. I do that, and there was a couple of days ago, her and her kids, just having some ice cream. And here you are, you start the show telling me to go get some ice cream. So I'm gonna do that and think about her. And so
well said.
Yeah, it's just the worst. All right, Frank, thank you so much. Thank you again for watching, for downloading, and for linking with us here on YouTube and on X and on Victory Plus. For Jessi's memory and everyone, thanks again so much for loving hockey. We love you right back. See you tomorrow.